eat cats and dogs. I'll get myself together, Claire.
Okay.
He's going to cry. He was close to tears on that one. Yesterday, we showed you how Donald Trump is doing really, really well with the Latino vote, with young people voting, with women, actually, of certain demographic groups. And, well, it's really going to make an impact in this election if this trend continues over the next 5 weeks. MSNBC, obviously, the spokespeople for the Democratic Party. Actually, it's not even fair to call them that. They're the brain trust for the Democrats. I know everybody thinks that in the Democrat media complex, as Andrew Breitbart first called them, that Democrat media complex means the people in the media do whatever the Democrats want them to do, right? The White House or the Kamala Harris campaign, they decide something and then they call up their friends at the media and they say, hey, let's go with this. We just came up with something. Actually, these days it works a little different. It's MSNBC that comes up with the ideas. It's MSNBC that drives the narrative. In some ways, MSNBC creates the narrative and then the politicians follow. That's how insidious this has become. Why? Well, here's a good example. Take a look at this lady. See that redhead there on the side of the screen? She's an employee of MSNBC News right now. Where was she a year ago? She was an employee of the White House. That's that revolving door. So she's actually much more effective for Democrats, for Biden, for Kamala Harris, by working at an NBC News outlet. She creates the narrative, and then the campaign picks it up. Yesterday, we showed you how they are panicking right now and they're upset because Trump is doing very well, especially this close to the election, right? And look at the reaction they had about Black voters moving toward Trump and Latino voters moving toward Trump. Watch this.
It is calculated, right? I mean, Donald Trump isn't just a doddering fool who happens to be racist. He's a calculated person who is not trying to grow his vote share. He's trying to speak into the id of a particular kind of voter about when he says we have to call out Detroit, Philly, and Atlanta. We have to go into Philly, Detroit, Atlanta. He lost Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan in 2020, which is how he lost the election. It's why he's under indictment for attempting to steal those races. What he's telling his voters, his small, his share of extreme MAGA voters, these Blacks are stealing the election. Black Haitians are violent cannibals. Black people are the enemy. Black people are going to be responsible if and when I lose, and you are permitted through my language to do violence to them if necessary to stop another peaceful transfer of power, because he understands that he is not winning the election.
Now, the kind of hateful lies that you just saw over on MSNBC can't even be calculated. I mean, we'll begin with the blatant lie that Donald Trump is under indictment for trying to steal elections in Michigan and Pennsylvania. That's not at all what Donald Trump is under indictment for. The indictments are frauds as they are, but that's actually not even the fraudulent reason why he's under indictment. But you just heard Joy Reid say that Donald Trump is threatening violence against Black people in those states if the election doesn't go their way. There's absolutely no indication at all. That's just a complete and total blatant lie. But look at that little peacock in the lower corner there. That's the MSNBC brand. That's the NBC News brand. That's Comcast Universal, publicly traded, by the way, on Wall Street, owning what you just saw from Joy Reid. Hey, you know how bad it is? I'm going to skip to the last 20 seconds of this clip, not in real time. I just want you to look at Jen Psaki's face. Actually, look at Joy Reid's face, too. That's a great freeze on Joy Reid. That's about right, especially with the Barbie doll blue eyeshadow. Look at Jen Psaki's face. Even she knows that this is bullshit. She knows exactly what kind of bullshit this is. Look at that face. She can't hide it. She's not that good. You can tell that even she inside is nauseated. She wants to take a bit of a Brillo pad shower after sitting through this. But listen, she's got an election to win. And if that means having Joy Reid, this blatant racist, go on the air and falsely accuse Donald Trump, and let's be real, she's accusing you for supporting Donald Trump of peddling in blatant racism that's trying to rile up violence against Black people in America, well, then that's what Jen Psaki is going to do, because her primary function right now is to try to defeat Donald Trump and Republicans. That's all it means. And if that means having Joy Reid on here to spew this, that's great. I look at this and I get nauseated by it. I get angry by it, but I get motivated by it because this motivates us to continue to work even harder to push back against this and bring the love to this campaign. Love for all Americans, regardless of color, because we see Black and Latino and Asian and white and men and women and old and young people who are all rallying around the Republican ticket right now because we're sick of this. We're so sick of this. I have one other emotion when I see this too, and I want you to have this emotion too. I want you to laugh when you see this. Not just at Joy Reid for being a clown, literally with the clown makeup and the clown hair right now, but laugh at Comcast Universal. I just mentioned them. They're the publicly held corporation that owns this. They actually own this. They paid for this, and they proudly put it out to divide our country. Laugh at Comcast Universal. Laugh at NBC Network. Laugh at NBC News, and granularly laugh at MSNBC, because they can never fire Joy Reid. They are stuck with her. They cannot let her contract expire without renewing it. In fact, they'll be forced to give her a raise when her contract is up. They have already signed her to a primetime deal, knowing that she said homophobic things about gay people back in her time. They already knew that. She lied about that and even triggered an FBI investigation into whether her website was hacked, even though she knew that she had not been hacked. So it was a false report to the FBI. They've allowed all of that to happen. They have let her say anything every single day. In fact, they promoted her from a weekend show to a primetime show, knowing exactly who she is, knowing exactly what she brings to the table, and they've allowed it to happen. They put her on primetime for election night coverage. They are so stuck with her. What can she say at this point to make NBC News say, that's it, we're done with you? You've gone too far. They absolutely can't. And if they decided, we're just going to go in a different direction, ratings aren't there, revenue's not good, we're going to have to bring in a different host, Joy Reid and Al Sharpton and every single race hustler on the left, and that's a lot of them, they will be on the front lawn of the CEO of Comcast Universal with bullhorns screaming, no Joy Reid, no peace. No primetime, no peace. They are so stuck with Joy Reid, and it's amazing to watch. So this makes me laugh. It actually makes me laugh at how screwed Comcast Universal is by agreeing to put this woman on the air, knowing that she is a race-baiting, divisive, hateful lunatic. But that's just the tip of the iceberg over there in terms of their panic and in terms of their odious attempt to inject race into this political campaign. Take a look at this. This is a White House correspondent for Politico. In fact, I think he's the president of the White House Correspondents Association, Eugene Daniels. You'll remember him with that magnificent fro. And I'm not being ironic. That's a good-looking fro. He was one of the 3 journalists from the National Association of Black Journalists who interviewed Kamala Harris in that incredibly cringe exchange that they had 2 weeks ago. Take a look at this.
He has a hard time running against Vice President Harris because she's a Black woman. You remember, actually, when he would tussle with the women that would ask him questions, our colleagues on the White House beat. Reporters. He held his kind of most angry self for Black women, right? If they asked him a question, he would have the worst things to say about them. So you're seeing that, right?
I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
And when he talked about Joe Biden got worse, Harris was born like that, right? That's different. That's a dog whistle to folks to say, the white guy just got older and it got worse, but the Black lady was born dumb. That is the kind of thing that Donald Trump is saying and selling to folks.
There you go. This is Donald Trump brings out his most angry self, according to this White House correspondent for Politico, because he's running against a Black woman, right? By the way, this is the roundtable. It's George Conway. That roundtable. I remember news shows when they first brought on the roundtable concept, where they would have different ideas and different perspectives from journalists or analysts, or maybe former politicians, or even sometimes current politicians. So you could have a roundtable discussion. A roundtable discussion is supposed to bring different perspectives and different ideas to a news topic so that the audience could be informed and enlightened about different perspectives on the news. I'm pretty sure this roundtable on Jen Psaki's show was, please bring your different personal perspective and analysis on just how hateful and racist Donald Trump is. And they're all Trump haters. The entire roundtable was Trump hater. Usually they'd have the token conservative, the token Republican, right? Like on CNN, they're still using Scott Jennings, and he still defeats everybody at the table. By the way, this guy who's the White House correspondent for Politico and the president of the White House Correspondents Association, I believe, should Trump win the election, he'll be a reporter in the room. He'll be a reporter in the White House press room on behalf of Politico to ask fair and balanced questions on behalf of their readers. It gets worse. Let's keep it on MSNBC because, boy, they want race riots in this country. Hey, it worked in 2020 with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. But, boy, it's just really tough luck for the Democrats this year that they didn't have a cop kill a black man. Although there's 5 weeks left, you never know what might happen. They might get lucky. But short of that, they got to figure out a way to get a race riot in. So let's see what else they have to say.
Donald Trump got in 2020. So it took historic numbers to beat him, right? And so now we get enamored with the Dick Cheneys and the Liz Cheneys and the Flakes and the da-da-da-da, right? And this man is running around here busting his chops, scaring the hell out of communities, right? And we're trying to figure out how to keep that middle, locked in on her when she needs to bust him in his mouth. I'm saying it like that because he's dangerous. He's dangerous to particular people. And the history of the country is such that we can't play fast and loose with it. Fast and loose with it.
Isn't it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are endangered by him?
But you never have. That's the rub. You never have. And so part of what we have to do in the midst of this is to engage in a deep-seated political calculus, right? Even though we know that she has to get the middle, we got to come out and try to figure out how to turn out in large historic numbers, because we got to keep this troglodyte out of office. Because if he comes in, our babies are going to be in danger. Because remember, those young children are going to grow up with the memory of having to not go to school for the threat of bombs. And somebody told them that their moms and dads eat cats and dogs. I'll get myself together, Claire.
Okay, take a minute. Deep breath.
Well, what about that?
I understand what you're saying.
He's going to cry. He was close to tears on that one. We have to protect our babies. He's a troglodyte. Again, drumming up the hate, dividing over racial lines. I think my favorite part there is when Nicole Wallace, the Republican at this panel, said that, well, it's not just Black people who are supposed to protect the most vulnerable people of color. Isn't it incumbent on all of us?
We can't play fast and loose with it. Fast and loose with it.
Isn't it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are endangered by him?
But you never have.
Look at the white guilt. That's the face of white guilt. Look at that white guilt. And she's not allowed to say, well, wait a second. You don't know anything about me. You don't know that. No. See, he just indicted her because of her skin color. She's white. And also she used to be a Republican. I think she still claims to be a Republican, which is just delightful. And look at how she can't say a damn thing. Here's the Black man sitting at this panel, injecting race into this conversation and making the entire presidential race about racial politics, because again, they're terrified at the numbers that are coming in right now. Black people, this is a great moment of white guilt and white shaming the white women at this table. But the message, just so you know, the message from this man is for Black voters. He's angry at Black voters right now, especially Black men, because Black men are voting for Trump in numbers that they've never seen before. And so he's trying to bring those voters back by trying to make them feel guilty. The funny thing is, though, they're not the putty in his hands like these white liberals are at this table. So listen to the end. Listen to the silence here. When she says, well, aren't we all supposed to protect the people who are endangered by Donald Trump? Endangered by Donald Trump. And he says, you never have. And then the white guilt on that. Look at the white guilt on that.
That's the rub. You never have.
Look at them all. They can't respond. They're not allowed to respond. And inside, they are flagellating themselves delightfully. They love it over their own white guilt. You know, whenever everyone talks about how this election is going to come down to white suburban moms, that's who's sitting at that table. That's who's sitting at that table. And they are powerless against that kind of accusation. That is the most manipulative, mean-spirited, obnoxious, disgusting thing I've seen somebody do on cable news, but I'm not surprised. It's MSNBC and he's a liberal. But this is the conversation going on over there. I know you don't watch. I don't want you to watch. I want you to come here, so I watch it for you and I tell you what happened. That's the black versus white racial politics that they injected. But they didn't end there on MSNBC. I told you yesterday about the polls showing Latino voters swinging over in huge numbers to Donald Trump. So we had to talk about that racial aspect. We had to inject racism into that discussion. Wait till you hear what this woman says about Latino voters who are voting for Trump.
She has a 14-point lead, but it has been shrinking after each consecutive presidential election from 2016. Right. Why is that? Why is the Democratic share of the Latino vote shrinking?
And what I said to you when we asked the question was, Latinos want to be white. They want to be with the cool kids. They want to be, I'm asking Latinos all the time and they just say, well, ese Donald Trump es tan buen negociante. He's such a good businessman. It's like, no, he's not. He had bankruptcies. But they don't want to be identified with all of those other immigrants that Donald Trump speaks so badly of, including me as a Mexican immigrant. So they're like, we'd rather, let's be with him. But those numbers, they could cost Kamala Harris the election. Everything that I've been saying that Latinos could push her over the top, these are the numbers that could also take her down.
Now, she's right about that last part, that these numbers are an existential threat to Kamala Harris. That's why you're seeing this narrative on MSNBC in the last 24 hours. It's almost like they watched our show yesterday and panicked. But did you catch that? You know, what's the deal? Why are these Latino voters voting this way? And the only explanation is because they want to be white. Again, is there anything more racist than this? They are the most racist people in the room while they're screaming racist at the rest of us. One other little tidbit here that I really enjoyed. While you're watching this show, MSNBC, look in the lower right-hand corner there. Let's blow that up as big as we can. While you're watching this racism play out on MSNBC, they're promoting later today our primetime racism special, Black Women in America, The Road to 2024. With, by the way, Simone Sanders. See the closely cropped hair black woman there who's going to host it? Who's Simone Sanders? Well, she used to be a spokesperson for the Bernie Sanders campaign during the 2020 election. And then she got a job in Kamala Harris's comms department when Kamala Harris became vice president. Now, like most people who work for Kamala Harris, she left within a year because only 92% of the people who worked for Kamala Harris in the last 3.5 years left. She's got 8% of her staff remaining. But needless to say, once again, like Jen Psaki, like George Stephanopoulos, like Jake Tapper, like Chuck Todd, like Jim Sciutto, like, oh gosh, I just can't list all of them. They all used to work for Democrats, politicians, and now they work in the media because they're journalists, don't you know? And the entire program tonight at 9 p.m. on MSNBC is Black Women in America, Road to 2024. They're desperate. They're absolutely desperate. And they're scared. And they're angry. And we're 5 weeks out. And they're lashing out at you. They're lashing out at all of us. They're lashing out at anyone who isn't going to stay on the reservation. Some would say stay on the plantation and vote the way they demand they vote. Hang on. It's going to be a rocky 35 days.